The Crowd, a book published in 1895 by French social psychologist Gustave Le Bon, is a classic work on collective psychology that explores the nature of collective behavior and thinking. In his book, Gustave Le Bon presents numerous concepts and arguments, the most famous of which is his description of the rabble. He argues that people become more impressionable in groups and lose their ability to think and judge individually, so that behavior and thinking in groups tend to be extreme or emotional. Gustave Le Bon believes that the formation of a rabble stems from people's instincts and emotions, which are often exploited by leaders or radicals to influence the behavior and thinking of the collective. Gustave Le Bon also points out that the formation of a rabble often occurs in times of social unrest or political crisis, as people tend to lose their sense of control and security in these times. In addition, Gustave Le Bon elaborates on other concepts of collective psychology, such as collective violence, collective prejudice, and collective superstition. He argues that these phenomena emerge from people's instincts and emotions, which are often amplified and influenced by the mob. The introductory chapter of The Crowd, entitled The Age of the Crowd, focuses on the social and political changes of the late 19th and early 20th centuries and the impact of these changes on people's behavior and thinking. Gustave Le Bon makes some key points in this chapter, as follows. Gustave Le Bon points out that the late 19th and early 20th centuries were an important turning point, a period of social and political change that had a profound impact on people's behavior and thinking. In his view, the changes of this period were manifested in the following ways. The acceleration of industrialization and urbanization. The process of industrialization and urbanization during this period accelerated the rhythm of people's lives and social interactions, which had an important impact on people's behavior and thinking. Changes in the political system. The political system underwent major changes during this period, such as the rise of democracy and the expansion of imperialism, which also had an impact on people's behavior and thinking. The development of science and technology. The development of science and technology in this period brought about unprecedented changes, such as electrification, communication technology, and transportation technology, which also had an impact on people's behavior and thinking. Secondly, Gustave Le Bon points out that these changes have had a profound impact on people's behavior and thinking. In his view, these effects are manifested in the following ways. People have become more focused on their personal interests. With the acceleration of industrialization and urbanization, the pace of people's lives has accelerated, social relationships have become more complex, and people have become more focused on their own interests and well-being. People have become more individualized. The changes in this period have made people's lifestyles and values more diverse and individualized, and people have become more concerned with their independence and autonomy. People have become more vulnerable. With the development of communication technology, people's access to information has become more diverse and rapid, which makes them more vulnerable to the influence of the media and other people. First of all, according to Gustave Le Bon, the group is a special psychological phenomenon that has the following basic characteristics. 1. Groups have a strong emotional component. The behavior and thinking of groups are strongly influenced by emotional factors, and people are prone to empathize and resonate emotionally in groups. 2. The group has strong aspirations. People in the group often have common ideals and goals, and this aspiration will also affect people's behavior and thinking. 3. The group has universality. People in the group often come from different backgrounds and social classes and have universality. 4. The group is relative. People in the group influence each other, so the behavior and thinking of the group are relative and interdependent. 5. The group has strong coordination. People in the group tend to follow certain rules and standards, and this coordination also affects people's behavior and thinking. Next, Gustave Le Bon analyzed the habits of group psychology and made the following points. 1. People in groups tend to lose their ability to think and judge individually and become more impressionable, so that behavior and thinking in groups tend to be extreme or emotional. 2. People in groups are easily influenced by leaders or radicals, which in turn affects the behavior and thinking of the group. 3. People in groups are susceptible to the influence of the media and others as the speed and means of information transmission become more rapid and diverse. Gustave Le Bon points out that the feelings and moral values of groups are strongly influenced by emotional factors, and that people in groups tend to develop empathy and emotional resonance. He argues that this emotional resonance is one of the important factors in group behavior and thinking. Second, Gustave Le Bon analyzes the expressions and habits of group feelings and moral concepts in different situations. Specifically, he makes the following points. 1. People in a group tend to have common feelings of pleasure or anger, which can be quickly transmitted and resonate in the group. 2. People in groups tend to have common emotional reactions to people or things that affect their behavior and thinking. 3. People in a group tend to follow certain moral standards and norms, which are often absolute in the group. 4. People in groups tend to develop collective emotions and moral concepts, which can influence the behavior and thinking of the group. Gustave Le Bon points out that concepts, reasoning, and imagination in groups are often influenced by group psychological factors, and that people in groups tend to produce common concepts, reasoning, and imagination. He argues that this commonality is one of the important factors of group behavior and thinking. Second, Gustave Le Bon analyzes the characteristics and habits of groups in terms of concepts, reasoning, and imagination. Specifically, he makes the following points. 1. People in groups tend to have common concepts and beliefs, which are often absolute in nature. 2. People in groups tend to have common ways of reasoning and logical thinking, and these ways of reasoning and logical thinking tend to be limited. 3. People in groups tend to have common imaginations and fantasies, which are often characterized by emotionality and exaggeration. Gustave Le Bon notes that group beliefs tend to be characterized by the following religious forms. 1. Group beliefs tend to be absolute and universal, with people in the group often believing that their beliefs are the only correct ones. 2. Group beliefs tend to be emotional and ritualistic, and people in the group tend to express their beliefs and emotions through religious rituals and symbols. 3. Group beliefs are often collective and social in nature, and people in groups tend to establish their own identity and social status through their beliefs. Second, Gustave Le Bon analyzes the performance and habits of group beliefs in different contexts. Specifically, he makes the following points. 1. Group beliefs are often influenced by leaders or radicals who can use them to control and influence the behavior and thinking of the group. 2. Group beliefs are often influenced by social and political changes, and become stronger when social and political changes bring about instability. 3. Group beliefs often have an impact on individual behavior and thinking, and when individual beliefs are inconsistent with group beliefs often become tools of suppression and exclusion. Gustave Le Bon notes that group opinions and beliefs are often influenced by indirect factors, including the media, social networks, leaders, and radicals. He argues that these indirect factors play an important role in the group and are significant in the formation and development of group opinions and beliefs. Second, Gustave Le Bon analyzes the specific roles and habits of indirect factors in the formation of group opinions and beliefs. Specifically, he makes the following points. 1. The media plays an important role in the formation and development of group opinions and beliefs, and the media can influence group opinions and beliefs through reporting and propaganda. 2. Social networks also play an important role in the formation and development of group opinions and beliefs, and they can influence group opinions and beliefs through information sharing and exchange. 3. Leaders and activists also play an important role in the formation and development of group opinions and beliefs, as they can influence group opinions and beliefs through their words and actions. Gustave Le Bon points out that the direct factors of group opinion formation include the psychology and behavior of individuals, and individuals in groups are often influenced by their own psychology and behavior, which in turn affects the formation of group opinions. He argues that these direct factors play an important role in the group and are significant to the formation and development of group opinion. Second, Gustave Le Bon analyzes the specific roles and habits of the direct factors of group opinion formation. Specifically, he makes the following points. 1. The individual's psychology and emotion play an important role in the formation and development of group opinion, and the individual's psychology and emotion can influence his or her perception and judgment of things. 2. Individuals' experience and knowledge also play an important role in the formation and development of group opinion. An individual's experience and knowledge can influence their knowledge and understanding of things. 3. The social status and identity of individuals also play an important role in the formation and development of group opinion, as they can influence their perceptions and judgments of things. Gustave Le Bon points out that group leaders have an important influence on the formation of group opinions and beliefs, and that they can influence group opinions and beliefs through their words and actions. He argues that group leaders play an important role in the group and are significant to the formation and development of group opinions and beliefs. Second, Gustave Le Bon analyzes the specific role and habits of group leaders' persuasive techniques. Specifically, he makes the following points. 1. Group leaders can use emotional and perceptual factors to persuade the group, such as fear, anger, joy, etc., to influence the group's opinions and beliefs. 2. Group leaders can use symbols and signs to persuade the group, such as flags, slogans, etc., to express their opinions and beliefs. 3. Group leaders can use speech and action to persuade the group, such as speeches, demonstrations, actions, etc., to express their opinions and beliefs. Gustave Le Bon points out that there is a wide range of changes in group opinions and beliefs, and that such changes may be caused by internal or external factors. He argues that understanding the causes and scope of these changes is important for understanding the nature and characteristics of group behavior and thinking. Second, Gustave Le Bon analyzes the causes of changes in group opinions and beliefs. Specifically, he makes the following points. 1. Changes in group experience and knowledge can affect changes in group opinions and beliefs. For example, as technology advances and times change, group concepts and values will change accordingly. 2. Changes in external events and environments can also influence changes in group opinions and beliefs. For example, changes in political, economic, and social environments can have an impact on group opinions and beliefs. 3. The persuasion and influence of group leaders and the media can also have an impact on group opinions and beliefs. For example, the words of leaders and media reports can have an impact on group opinions and beliefs. Gustave Le Bon points out that groups can be categorized in different ways, for example, in terms of their size, nature, purpose, composition, and so on. He argues that by classifying groups, the behavior and thinking characteristics of different types of groups can be better understood and analyzed. Second, Gustave Le Bon analyzes the specific ways and characteristics of group classification. Specifically, he makes the following points. 1. The classification of groups by their size, such as small groups, medium-sized groups, and large groups, etc. Groups of different sizes have different organizational forms and behavioral characteristics. 2. The nature of the group, such as religious groups, political groups, economic groups, etc. Different nature of the group has different purposes and values. 3. To classify by the purpose of the group, such as academic research groups, cultural and entertainment groups, occupational groups, etc. Groups with different purposes have different behavioral and thinking characteristics. 4. Categorized by the composition of groups, such as age, gender, geographic groups, etc. Different groups have different social backgrounds and cultural characteristics. Gustave Le Bon points out that criminal groups are those groups that are linked together by criminal behavior. Criminal groups have relatively stable organizational forms and behavioral patterns, and their members usually have similar social backgrounds and cultural characteristics. Second, Gustave Le Bon analyzes the reasons for the formation of criminal groups. Specifically, he makes the following points. 1. Social structural inequality and the gap between the rich and the poor are important reasons for the formation of criminal groups. In an environment of poverty and social exclusion, some people may induce criminal behavior and form criminal groups. 2. Social value disorders and poor cultural integration are also one of the reasons for the formation of criminal groups. In the case of cultural differences and different values, criminal behavior may be induced and encouraged. 3. The formation of criminal groups may also be influenced by the political and economic environment. Political and economic instability and instability may lead to an increase in criminal activity and the formation of criminal groups. Gustave Le Bon points out that a jury is a type of trial body composed of civilians, usually selected by the court from the civil status registry, who try criminal cases and decide on the defendants. Second, Gustave Le Bon analyzes the characteristics of the jury system and its impact on the administration of justice. Specifically, he makes the following points. 1. The jury system emphasizes the principles of democracy and impartiality. Jury members are ordinary citizens, representing the pluralism and democratic thinking of society, and their verdicts can reflect the values and moral standards of society. 2. The jury system can reduce the autocratic nature of judicial trials. Jury members come from all walks of life, and they can think and judge cases independently, and monitor and control the arbitrariness and unfairness of the judicial system. 3. The jury system increases the transparency and openness of the judicial system. The process and results of jury verdicts are public, which increases the transparency and openness of the judicial system and allows the public to monitor and evaluate judicial trials. Gustave Le Bon noted that the features and implications of the jury system are important for understanding judicial trials and social justice. He argues that the jury system has both strengths and weaknesses and needs to be continually improved and refined in order to achieve justice and efficiency. Gustave Le Bon points out that the electorate is the group of citizens who vote to elect government officials and formulate policies. Voter groups have relatively stable organizational forms and behavioral patterns, and their members usually share similar political views and values. Second, Gustave Le Bon analyzes the reasons for the formation of voter groups. Specifically, he makes the following points. 1. Socioeconomic background is an important factor in the formation of voter groups. People from different social classes usually have different political interests and values, which leads to the formation of voter groups. 2. Political competition and the electoral system are also important factors in the formation of voter groups. The competition between political parties and the design of the electoral system have an impact on the formation and behavior of voter groups. 3. The development of media and internet technology also influences the formation and behavior of voters. Media and internet technologies have allowed voters to access a wider range of political information and views, which in turn affects their political behavior. Gustave Le Bon analyzes the impact of voter groups on democratic politics. He points out that the formation and behavior of voter groups have a significant impact on political competition, political decision-making, and political stability. Voter groups have the ability to constrain and influence political competition in elections, which in turn affects political decision-making and political stability. According to Le Bon, a parliament is a political body composed of elected members representing the citizens, whose duties are to make and amend laws, supervise the government, and represent public opinion. The parliament has a relatively stable organizational form and behavior pattern, and its members usually share similar political views and values. Second, Gustave Le Bon analyzes the functions and characteristics of the parliament. Specifically, he makes the following points. 1. Making and amending laws is the main duty of the parliament. The parliament enacts and amends laws through the legislative process to reflect public opinion and social needs. 2. Monitoring the government is another important duty of the legislature. The parliament supervises the government through questioning and monitoring to ensure that the government's administrative actions are in line with the law and public opinion. 3. Representing public opinion is the core responsibility of the council. By representing public opinion, the parliament reflects the pluralistic political views and values of the society and promotes political stability and development. Gustave Le Bon analyzed the influence of parliament on democratic politics. He pointed out that the parliament, as a political institution representing public opinion, has an important impact on political stability, political development, and democratic governance. It can reflect the pluralistic political views and values of the society, promote political stability and development, as well as constrain and supervise the administrative behavior of the government to ensure the operation of the democratic system. As a political institution representing public opinion, Gustave Le Bon believes that parliaments have an important impact on political stability, political development, and democratic governance, and therefore need to be studied and understood better in order to promote the development and improvement of democratic institutions. Le Bon was born in 1841 and was a medical doctor. It was not until he was about 43 that he began to study group psychology. He was at the turning point of the Industrial Revolution that was reshaping European society. In the preface to his book, he wrote explicitly, "The present age is one of the critical moments of the transformation of human thought, a transformation resulting from two fundamental factors, the destruction of religious, political, and social beliefs, and the development of society and industry, which has created entirely new conditions of existence and thought. The chaos has created a leaderless transition, which Le Bon calls the age of the masses, and it is frightening that lawmakers and politicians know nothing about how the masses emerge and nurture their power. I know." A veteran pathologist, Le Bon sees a society in the midst of a sea change as a group of herd patients. He argues that when countless people come together, their behavior is inherently different from that of individual human beings. When people come together, there is a unity of thought. Le Bon calls this the mental law of group mental unity. He came to the frightening conclusion that reason has no influence on the group, which is only influenced by unconscious emotions. Le Bon also made a series of startling observations. People think in terms of images, and there is no logical relationship between these images. The emotions generated by imagery are sometimes so strong that they can be acted upon. People are moved by miracles and legends, and miracles are the real pillars of civilization. The imagination of the masses has always been the basis of the power of politicians, and great politicians have made the imagination of the masses the cornerstone of their power. A group of people exaggerates their feelings so much that they are moved only by extreme emotions. The orator who wants to move the masses must speak sternly, swear, repeat, and never prove anything by reasoning. The morality of a group can be better or worse than that of an individual. They can kill and set fire and commit all sorts of evil, but they can also exhibit extremely noble piety and recklessness, i.e., extremely noble behavior that isolated individuals simply cannot do. Calls for honor, glory, and patriotism are most likely to affect the individuals who make up a group, and may even lead to death by generosity. This not too thick psychology book is full of such words, cold as a scalpel, but precise and subtle. To describe how the crowd madness effect fermented in business practices and was exploited by capitalists, Le Bon cites the Mississippi Plan of 1719. In that case, a French banker issued stocks on the basis of a fictitious plan for the economic development of the Mississippi Valley, creating the biggest bubble in French financial history. Le Bon warned, "Is it money that causes madness, or madness that creates illusions?" The absurdity of the cramming together is evident. When Le Bon's book was published, it quickly caught the attention of dignitaries. U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt read the crowd carefully and insisted on meeting the author. Some lamented that we condemned Le Bon, but we searched and read his work thoroughly. Many scholars have even suggested that Mussolini, Hitler, and the early Soviet revolutionaries were all followers of Le Bon. They knew Le Bon's theories well and acted on them faithfully. No matter how neutral we assume the crowd to be, in most cases they were in a state of expectation and were open to suggestion. Once a suggestion is made, it is quickly transmitted to every brain through infection, and the direction is immediately set. In those who receive the suggestion, the fixed obsession can be transformed into action at any time. Whether it is to burn down a palace or to do a pious deed, a group of people is ready to do it. Everything depends on the nature of the stimulus, not on the relationship between the proposed action and the rational factors that may prevent its realization, as individuals do in isolation. Thus, the crowd hovers on the edge of the unconscious, accepting suggestions, driven by emotional violence without resorting to rational intervention. They lack a critical spirit and can only show extreme gullibility. Impossible does not exist for them. We must recognize this in order to understand why some very strange legends and stories appear so easily and circulate everywhere. Legendary stories that circulate so easily among groups of people emerge not only because they are completely gullible, but also because the elements of the story change dramatically in the imagination of the individual group. Through the eyes of the crowd, the simplest things immediately make a big difference. The crowd thinks through images, an image that leads to a series of images, but there may be no logical relationship between them. It is easy to understand this state of affairs. Sometimes, when someone throws out a fact, we are tempted to have a series of strange thoughts. Reason would tell us that these images are incoherent and irrational, but the crowd does not see this. Their imagination is so capricious that it can add to the event, making all the elements blend together. All the elements are mixed together. People who are unable to separate the subjective from the objective believe that the images that appear in their minds are real. In fact, in most cases, these images are far from the observed facts. It is logical that there should be countless versions of an event in the crowd's imagination, with each member interpreting it differently because everyone has a different personality. But it simply isn't. Through a series of transmissions, the various versions of the event have the same nature and the same meaning for all individuals in the collective. The first modified version seen by the members will form the core of the entire infectious proposal. It is said that all the Crusaders saw Saint George the Martyr on the walls of Jerusalem. In fact, only one person had to be around to see it. Through suggestion, psychological infection, the miracle was instantly accepted by everyone. There have been so many illusions in history, all created by this kind of mechanism. They seem to have all the standard characteristics to become reality, because these phenomena have been witnessed by thousands of people. The individual spirit of the individuals that make up a crowd does not contradict this principle. Individual spirituality is irrelevant, and as soon as the group comes together, the intellectual and the ignorant become equally unobservable. Many more examples could be cited. The following is the most typical example, chosen from the collective hallucinations that affect the intellectual and the ignorant. Lieutenant Julian Felix inadvertently recorded it in his book on ocean currents. The cruiser USS Pheasant was at sea trying to recover the ship Cradle, but a storm destroyed her from the battleship. It was daytime and the sun was shining. Suddenly, the watching sailors told everyone that there was a lost ship in the distance. Everyone looked towards that point, both officers and sailors, and saw clearly a raft, towed by some small boats with many people on board, and a distress signal flashing from the boats. Admiral de Varese sent his men aboard a small boat to rescue the shipwrecked men. As they approached, the sailors and officers of the boat saw many people stirring with their arms outstretched, and heard many voices mingled together. When the men reached the so-called raft, they saw only a few branches, covered with leaves, pulled from the nearby shore. The illusion disappeared in the face of the obvious fact that it was within reach. This example fully illustrates the mechanism of collective illusion that we have already explained. On the one hand, the group itself has the psychology of anticipation. On the other hand, the sailors who let the wind out tell the group that what lies ahead is a ship lost at sea. This suggestion was accepted collectively by everyone present, including the officers and men, with the power of contagion. It was not necessary for the crowd to be large enough to destroy the ability to observe correctly and to allow the real facts to be replaced by irrelevant fantasies. When several people get together, they can become a community. Even if they are outstanding scholars, they have all the characteristics of a group once they are confronted with a topic beyond their expertise. The inherent observational and critical spirit of each of them disappears. The wise psychologist Mr. David gives us an intriguing example, which is reported in Psychological Yearbook and is worth quoting here. Mr. David invited a group of distinguished observers, including one of Britain's most famous scholars, Mr. Alfred Russel Wallace. He asked them to carefully examine what was being used and to stamp anywhere they could. Then, David presented some of the most classic paranormal phenomena in front of the group, including the reincarnation of ghosts and the appearance of writing on stone tablets. These distinguished observers wrote reports proving that the phenomena they had observed were obtained by supernatural means. Then David was there to proclaim the truth, but he only used the most common deceptions. The person who relayed the experiment wrote, "The most surprising thing about Mr. David's experiment was not how clever the trick was, but how slow the layman was to write the report." He went on to write, "Thus, eyewitnesses can write many convincing but completely false reports. Therefore, if the phenomenon they describe is considered correct by others, it cannot be interpreted as deception." The device invented by Mr. David. It is so simple that it is astonishing that he should dare to use it, yet he has such a powerful influence on the minds of crowds, that he makes them see what they cannot see. This is also the effect of the hypnotist on the hypnotized. However, when we see the manipulator exercising this power on a highly intelligent person, the latter is initially hesitant as well. It is not difficult to imagine that the general population is prone to false illusions. There are many similar examples. A few years ago, the newspapers reported the drowning of 2 little girls in the Seine River, who were later recovered. A dozen witnesses identified the deceased in the most certain way. Everyone's story was so consistent that, in the judge's eyes, there was no doubt, and he ordered the death certificates to be signed. A child went to identify the dead child, but was wrong. What followed was a series of misidentifications. Then, the crowd saw something very strange. The next day, after a schoolboy identified the body, a woman screamed, "Ah! Oh my God, it's my baby!" They carried her over to the body, and she looked closely at the remains around her and found a scar on her forehead. She said, "That's him, my poor son. He disappeared in July. He was abducted and killed." The woman was a porter from Autumn Street, and her name was Madame de Chavandry. Her uncle, who was also called in, did not hesitate to say, "That's him, poor little Philibert." Many of the residents of 4th Street recognized him as Philibert. The Summer King came. It also included his elementary school teacher, who saw a medal and proved that it belonged to Philibert himself. But the neighbors, the uncle, the elementary school teacher and the mother herself were all wrong. 6 weeks later, the child was identified as coming from Bordeaux, where he had been murdered and sent to Paris. We note that this identification is often carried out by women and children, who are the most vulnerable population. This illustrates how much legal value such identification can have. In particular, the affirmative words of children should not be used as evidence. Judges often say that people of this age do not lie, as if it were a known fact. Any psychologist of any degree can tell them that, on the contrary, children of this age almost always lie. There is no doubt that those lies are unintentional, but they are lies after all. Should the defendant be sentenced? Instead of listening to the child's testimony, as is often the case, it is better to toss the coin and look at the positive or negative side of the matter. In retrospect, we can conclude that group observation is the most error-prone of all observations, and it usually represents the illusion of one person, which is passed on to all others. There are many facts that prove that the testimony of the crowd is not credible. Thousands of people witnessed the cavalry charge at the Battle of Sedan. However, eyewitness testimonies are contradictory, and there is no way to know who commanded the battle. A recent book by British General Sir John Worsley confirms that some of the most important facts of the Battle of Waterloo are in fact seriously inaccurate. However, there were hundreds of eyewitnesses who confirmed these facts. Again, all of these examples demonstrate the value of collective testimony. In many logic textbooks, unanimous testimony is cited as one of the most reliable evidence for the veracity of events. But we know from our understanding of crowd psychology that textbook authors are seriously misunderstood on this point. The events observed by most people are often the most suspicious ones. If a fact has been seen by thousands of eyewitnesses, it means that the true facts are far from the accepted version. The main point of the crowd is that people in a collective lose their ability to think and judge individually, become more impressionable, and therefore tend to behave and think in extremes or emotionally. Gustave Le Bon argues that this phenomenon arises from people's instincts and emotions, which are often exploited by leaders or radicals to influence the behavior and thinking of the collective. In addition, Le Pamphos points out that the formation of a rabble often occurs in times of social unrest or political crisis, when people tend to lose their sense of control and security over reality. He also elaborates on other concepts of collective psychology, such as collective violence, collective prejudice, and collective superstition, and argues that these phenomena emerge from people's instincts and emotions, which are often amplified and influenced by the rabble. The main point of the crowd is about collective psychology, which reveals the nature and characteristics of people's behavior and thinking in groups, and emphasizes the vulnerability of people to the influence of leaders or radicals. In addition, Gustave Le Bon highlights the relationship between the formation of a rabble and social unrest or political crisis. In conclusion, The Crowd is a classic work on collective psychology, which reveals the nature and characteristics of people's behavior and thinking in the collective and is important for understanding the development of modern society and politics.